Hey there nation, and welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander Cheapskate, and we are back with a very special episode of Commander Cheapskate Gamer Reviews. And on this video, we're actually doing something quite unique because we're looking at a brand new gaming system that I've never reviewed before or taken a look at. This system is called Primordial Steel. It is a sword and sorcery skirmish battle game set in the lost age of Earth's past. It's a really cool dark fantasy kind of mythological skirmish war game that is produced by a publisher called Nth Level Wargaming. Now, the cool thing about this product, of course, is that this is an independent company, pretty new on the scene. I think they only have 3 titles out right now for their games, and this is actually their biggest one that they've actually had. And it's actually a pretty neat game. I've actually had the pleasure of actually taking a look at this product and reviewing it. So in this video, we're going to talk about this new miniature agnostic skirmish game that's now available for you guys to take a look at. We'll talk about the company that made the product. We'll also talk about the product itself. We'll discuss a little bit about the lore of what this setting's all about, as well as some of the gameplay mechanics with the game itself. We'll talk about some of their rule settings, how they do combat, how you build your own skirmishing force to fight in this game. We'll review the positives of this product, its negatives, and provide our overall conclusion on it. Now, because this video will be a little bit more of a deeper dive, I will put timestamps down in the description box below for you to check out, so that way you can go to the part of this product that actually interests you the most. So I'm very excited to actually review this product, so let's go ahead and get started by talking about Primordial Steel. So first of all, let's talk about the company that makes this product. The company is called Nth Level, and it's based out of Cardiff, Wales, all the way across the pond over in the United Kingdom. Their mission statement is actually quite cool. Their mission statement is basically this: your models, our rules, one great time. And so far I can say that they pretty much lived up to that mission statement with this game. Another thing about this product that is really cool as well is that it is a miniature agnostic game, and that in my opinion is really awesome as well, because miniature agnostic games are a great way for wargamers to diversify the games they play, especially if they already have miniatures on hand. There's nothing better than having one set of miniatures that you can use for multiple games, because that way you have more options to play, you don't have to spend as much money to do so, and that for me is a really cool aspect of independent studios making miniatures games. I always like saving my viewers money on anything they can for the miniatures wargaming hobby, and Miniatures Agnostic does exactly that. Now, I will of course have full disclosure on this one. These guys from Nth Level did send me an email around Christmas time during the Christmas holiday telling me about this game, so they did send me a free copy of this game for review, and after I looked over it, learned some of the rules, I believe it's a really good system, and I'm really happy to provide them with my feedback on it by doing this video review on it. So if you are very interested in doing so, you could actually go to their website and actually download a free version of this game and try it out for yourself to see if you like it, which is absolutely kind of cool. So now that we're done with talking about the company itself, let's go ahead and talk about the product. So the product itself is available for both hard copy as well as for digital download. The digital download is available for PDF from $12 if you purchase it from their site. You can also get hard copies that are also available from Wargamer Vault and other independent stockists. You could also get a Kindle version of this from Amazon as well, which is kind of cool too. And I have to be perfectly honest with you guys, it's actually a pretty fair price for the product's quality and the rule set and what it actually offers you as well. So that $12 is actually quite nice. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about the beautiful quality of this product. Now, I don't have any screenshots of the actual rulebook at all. I didn't feel comfortable actually putting up their stuff up on this video review because I wanted for you to actually check it out for yourself, and don't want to have them like cause any copyright infringement or causing any lack of sales because of that. So if I highly suggest for you to go check out their free PDF version. Their free PDF version is free to download from their website, and it's actually the same kind of quality on that one as is in the product as well. It's beautifully laid out with amazing artwork in the middle of it as well, so it's really worth the price that you're actually paying for it. So now that we're done talking about the cost of the product, let's go ahead and talk about the lore real quick. So for those of you who are interested in the lore and the background setting of this game, the lore is set within Earth's ancient past. Think of it as a mythical dark fantasy story. That's pretty much how it is. It involves ancient civilizations like ancient Greece and ancient Rome, for example, as well as ancient Egypt. They also have some references to the Celts of Celtic culture in this setting as well. And they also, of course, have their traditional high fantasy styles as well. And what they do is they kind of take this lore and combine it with elements of mythology from our ancient past. Kind of think of it as kind of like the Hyborian Age from the Conan series of novels, where they're like a mythical time between ancient history and the Middle Ages, between the beginning of mankind in the middle and the ancient history where there's like this mythical, magical aspect to Earth's ancient past, and that's pretty much the setting you're pretty much looking at as well. Now, because of its unique setting, if you are a historical war gamer who does things around like ancient Egypt or around ancient Rome and Greece, or with like the Celtic barbarian groups, for example, or Germanic tribes, this game is actually kind of nice for you as well, because you already have the miniatures that pretty much cover the scope of the setting, so you could actually just play that right off the bat. But if you don't, no stress. It is a miniatures agnostic game, so you can use any miniatures that you want to portray any of the factions that are available in this game. So let's talk about the game itself. It is a dark fantasy skirmish game, which is played on 28mm scale. So if you have any 28mm agnostic miniatures that you want to use for this, it's perfect. At the same time, it also plays on a 4-foot by 4-foot table, is what it's designed to do. At the same time, though, they also have rules to fight larger battles. So if you want to play on a 4x6 table, it is easy to do so. All you gotta do, of course, is just scale up the point values that you actually use in this game. So that part is really nice as well. Now, the game itself and the actual rulebook actually comes with 6 scenarios that you can actually play. These scenarios are called Control the Monoliths, Balance of Power, Loot the Kraken, Light the Beacons, the Tempest, as well as the Delve. Each of the different scenarios are unique. Some of them are objective-based scenarios. Some of them require you to take items off the battlefield. Some of them are just straight-up fights in some cases. So because of that, it's actually really cool. They got a nice little diversity of scenarios that you can actually play with your friends if you decide to play this game. At the same time, there's also 9 different factions that you can choose from in this game as well. You have the Anobite Kingdom, which is pretty much like mythological ancient Greece. You have the city-states, which are mythological ancient Greece. You have the Darken, which are basically like your orcs and goblins and orcs and typical Mordor style type faction. You have the Mountain Clans, which are also really cool too, as well as the Northman Raiders. Northman Raiders are kind of like the ancient Norse, for example. You have the Ryujin Shogunate, which is like mythical ancient Japan. Swamp Tribes, which are kind of like your lizardmen, as well as goblins. You have the Lupine Empire, which is based off of ancient Rome. And you have Warriors of Albion, which is around the Celtish type of peoples as well. So like I said, there's actually a nice variety of different factions to choose from, so that way there's a lot of interesting miniatures and I'm sorry, not miniatures, interesting fighter types and commanders that you can choose from, and you can use your miniatures to portray those guys in the game as well. Now, however, there is one negative to this. There is no campaign system as of yet for this game, so if you're looking for a campaign system, it doesn't exist in this rule set. It's just a straight up skirmish game right now. So let's talk about the rules for this game. In the game, there's pretty much 4 phases. You have the draw phase, orders phase, action phase, as well as the command test phases. And we're going to basically talk about these as we go through it as well. And in order to play this game, you basically need 2 extra things besides your miniatures and the rules. You also need gaming tokens of some sort. This could take place of any kind of thing that you want, from individual gaming tokens, or you could use poker chips, or you can just use different colored dice if you want to for the game mechanic on this. They call it a chip system is what they call it, and a chip can be pretty much anything you want. At the same time, you also need dice to play as well. You would need D4s, at least 2 D4s, 2 D6s, 2 D8s, and probably 2 D10s and 12s as well. So if you're a role player, for example, and you play like Dungeons and Dragons, for example, you probably have these dice on hand. And if not, you can easily get these dice for a pretty fair price from any kind of miniatures wargaming store or from online as well. So like I said before, the draw phase uses this idea using gaming tokens called chips in this one. And like I said before, the gaming chip can be anything. So you could be poker chips, it could be gaming tokens, or just different colored dice, where the case may be. Now what you do is you put these chips inside of a bag, and what you do is you put 1 chip for every commander that is in your faction and in the game that you're actually playing. And basically you just kind of shake it around, and whenever the turn begins, you basically reach in the bag, pull out your chip, and if your chip is drawn, you're the one who gets to go for that phase. Now, once your chips are placed, what you do is from there is that your commander then activates a number of warriors within your army. Now, the number of warriors they can activate is basically based on their command stat. It's a statistic that they actually have in their characteristics, and that's the number of fighters that they can activate within 6 inches. That is known as the order phase, is how it works. So then once you activate the troops as well as your commander, from there you then move on to the action phase. Now, during the action phase, there are several actions that you can choose from. You can choose to move, fight, shoot, aim, prepare, charge, or cast spells. Now, for most of these are all pretty much straightforward what they do. The aim action actually gives you bonuses to help you land range attack shots, while prepare helps you to actually get bonuses for close combat and such. And there's actually, as simple as it may sound, there's actually a lot of nuances to these different actions depending on what you're trying to accomplish. So if you actually play this game, you can actually use these different actions to your advantage in order to get up help you up and land successes for your attacks and such. Now, in order to determine whether you are successful or not, you use a series of dice in order to do so. Almost every single warrior has these characteristics where they use specific dice for their attacks and for their action. For example, you can use a pair of D4s or a pair of D6s or a pair of D8s, things like that nature. Now, the thing about this is that there are modifiers to this, and I'll talk about this a little bit more when we get to the combat portion of the review. But pretty much what you do is, based on your modifiers, they actually don't impact the number you roll. What they do is they impact the type of dice you roll. So for example, let's say you have a base attack of 2d6 and you have a +1 modifier. Instead of rolling 2d6, you roll 2d8 is what you do instead. And like I said before, we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the combat system. So it's actually a very simple system to add those modifiers and exactly how you determine successes or not with the different actions that you take. Now from there, of course, you have what's called the command test phase, and what ends up happening is that once your activations are over with, you have to roll to see if your command chip actually goes back in the bag or if it's taken out. Now the cool thing about this is that as your commanders activate, you get what's called fatigue placed on them is what it does. And every single time they take one of these fatigue counters, it actually subtracts the number of dice you get to roll to see if your commander gets to put their chip back into the bag. So the more times your commander is activated, or any times that they're taking wounds of that case, it actually impacts whether they can put their gaming chip back in the bag or not. And if of course they can't get back in the bag, you kind of lose your activation and your opponents get more activations. Now of course you do have a situation where you could of course have the same player going multiple times in a row before their opponent activates, but the more fatigue you take for your team, the less of a chance you have to activate later on. And that's how they kind of balance this activation mechanic, which is actually kind of cool. What you do is you take your command state and you minus any fatigue tokens and wound counters that your commander takes, and that's what impacts your ability to reactivate again later on. So it's actually kind of neat how that does that. So while it is kind of cool you can have back-to-back activations, just realize that later on down the line when something critical is coming up, you might not be able to do anything because your commanders have been fatigued in combat. So it's actually a really neat game mechanic for that. So let's get to the heart and soul of this game, which is combat. So let's talk about this. Your combat characteristic is based on a pair of dice. And like I said, when every single characteristic for the factions in this game, you have basically 2 dice of a particular type of dice for your attacks, whether they be D4s, D6s, D8s, or the case may be. Now in this game, they have a game mechanic called downshift or upshift when it comes to your modifiers in your game. So for example, let's pretend that your fighter is going to make an attack, and let's say their base attack is worth 2d6. That's their base characteristic. And let's say you have any positive modifiers that upshift the value of those dice. Let's say you took an aiming action, or maybe it's part of your special rules of the case. In that case, your 2d6, for example, can be upgraded to 2d8 in order to make that attack. Or if you have negatives, it could actually lower it, so from 2d6 down to 2d4. That's an example of how this works. And what you do is, depending on your modifiers, whether you're increasing the type of die you're using or decreasing the type of die you're using, you take both those values and you roll them. And that's pretty much how it works for the combat. So once you of course have your characteristic figured out where your dice are going to be at, whether they've upshifted or downshifted or just remain the same, you take both your dice and you roll them, and then when those dice are rolled, you take the values and you add together. Now from there you compare that to your target's defense characteristic, and every single fighter has 2 values for the defense characteristic. So for example, in my example up here on my screen, I have one value of 6 or /7. If you manage to get the 6 on that one, for example, you cause 1 wound for your opponent, and of course they take 1 wound for their fighter. Now if you of course beat the second value, in this case the 7, that's considered a critical hit, and they actually take 2 wounds on that as well, so they take 2 damage on that part. So it's actually a pretty simple game to learn. Either inflict 1 wound or 2 wounds. Now there are some game mechanics of course where you can inflict more than 2 wounds depending on different factors and special rules and such, but this is just a brief overview how the game pretty much operates. So like I said, this game is very easy to learn. You can apply these rules very, very quickly, and you can probably start playing within 30 minutes of actually getting this book. In fact, that's the cool thing about this. It's very easy to learn, very fast to learn, and it's also very fast-paced in terms of the game mechanics. Now, if you're interested in building up your force, it's based on a point system, kind of like Warhammer or 40k or Kill Team, so you do have a base points. Now, they suggest in the game that you start off with 300 points for a skirmish game, and that's how many points you get to actually activate your troops and, get your materials and upgrades and stuff like that. Now, you can, of course, upgrade it to 600 points if you want to make a full-scale battle on a 4x6 table, but it's really up to you how you want to do it as well. And that's the really nice thing about this, is that you can actually scale up the game from being a skirmish game to a full-blown battle game, depending on how you want to play the game, which is really, really cool in my opinion. Regardless of what level you decide to play at, for every 100 points that you're playing at, you get to choose a single commander, and that single commander then could take troops based on their command statistics. So let's protect, for example, you have a command statistic of 4, you can take 4 troops. That's pretty much how it works. Now, for your warriors and your soldiers, they can be customizable with different weapon options and equipment options and special rules which modify their attacks, their defenses, and etc. And if you want to learn more about that, of course, you can take a look at the rule book and then give you some examples. For example, one of the characters you could check, of course, is what's called a hoplite. This is from the city-state army, and the hoplite is your typical warrior, and they could actually take upgrades to their armor by taking a special type of shield to use, for example. And that's pretty much how you can go about customizing your forces, which is absolutely really cool about this. So it's not too simplistic, because you could actually do a lot of variety of customization for your forces. There's a lot of nuances to this game that actually makes it quite diverse in its gameplay. So now that we've talked about the game mechanics, the rules overview, as well how to build your force, let's talk about our overall impressions of this game. And first of all, let's start off with the pauses on this one. This is an extremely well-written system with a very simplistic rule set, and you can learn to play this game within a half an hour of reading the rules. It's really, really nice to learn that, because unfortunately when you get into miniatures wargaming, sometimes the rules can really bog down the gameplay, and it can really cause a lot of stress for players because they gotta double check things. But this system is actually quite simple and quite intuitive, and so once you learn the rules, you can pretty much just start playing right off the bat, which is really nice as well. As the creator states, it's made to play almost immediately on their website, and that they actually live up to their word when it comes to this game system. At the same time, probably the best part about this, in my opinion, is that it's a miniatures agnostic game, which is a huge benefit, especially for players who are just starting out in the miniatures wargaming hobby. Unfortunately, miniatures wargaming does have a pretty high cost of entry for a lot of hobbyists, because you have to either have a huge army or the products that you need to purchase are quite expensive. Having a miniature agnostic game is really nice, because if you already have miniatures on hand, that's one less thing you have to buy in order to play the game, which is really, really useful. Or you could just go with some third party or even cheaper miniatures in order to purchase those to play. Or if you're lucky enough to have a 3D printer, you can actually print up your own, which is absolutely fantastic to use as well. Another nice thing about this is very cheap to purchase as well. It's only $12 for the digital format, which is absolutely fantastic. And the nice part about this company, they even give you a free download that you can actually use. It's a demo version of the game. I believe the rules are a little bit simpler than the actual full-blown game, but you can actually try this game out ahead of time by going to their website and downloading that demo. And if you like it, then you can purchase the full set and actually just start going in full depth with Primordial Steel. And in my opinion, that's really nice, because sometimes, gamers are kind of hesitant to try out a system first before they fully commit to it. So try the demo, and if you try it and you like it, by all means, purchase the product and then go full blown with it. Now, there are, of course, only one negative of this, and there's only one negative to it, in my opinion, and that is there's no campaign system. It's just a straight skirmish gaming system right now. So there is no campaign system for it. That's the only negative, but that's just because that's my own personal preference. I like having campaign systems, and that's a thing that I like doing when it comes to skirmish games. But I know that some people, that's not necessarily the case. Sometimes you just want to have an uncomplicated game where you actually play and have fun with your friends playing a skirmish game, and that is perfectly fine. I don't know if they're working on a campaign system for this game or not, or if they're not, you could actually make your own, so that's not a big deal at all. So that's the only negative to it, is the campaign system, just a lack of it. Not a real big issue though. That's just me and a personal preference for myself. So in conclusion, this is a very fun, fast-paced game to play with very little effort to prepare for, in my opinion. You need very little resources. You just have the one rule book. You don't have to carry a library of stuff with you to any of your games as well. At the same time, there's a lot of choices to choose from a game like this with 9 different factions. So there are lots of choices to make your forces from, a nice variety of troops to choose from as well. as well as commanders. The amount of choice that you actually have for this game is actually quite awe-inspiring considering how this game is actually set up, which is actually really cool as well. And in my opinion, because the rules are so simple, you're not bogged down with a lot of double checking and etc. You can learn the rules, learn the basics of the game really quickly, make your forces, and start playing. And that's a really nice aspect of this as well. But even though the rules may be simple, it's not like mindlessly so, because there's a lot of nuances to the games, like the different actions you can take, for example, the way you kit out your forces, the special rules attached to some of their military forces as well. That's the nice part about it. It's very easy to learn, but at the same time though, there's a lot to you to master still in order to actually just to dominate your opponent, for example. You gotta kind of test out things, which is actually kind of cool. And of course, probably the best thing of all, it's very, very cheap for the player. We're talking about a $12 initial cost for entry for the full set of rules. And if you have any miniatures on hand, you can use those as well. And if you don't have miniatures on hand, you can purchase the cheapest miniatures you can find to play, or 3D print your own, which is absolutely fantastic. And in my opinion, this is also a perfect game for a first-time wargamer. So if you're starting to get into miniatures wargaming and you're not sure which one to try out, I would try this one out first. The rules are very cheap to purchase. The miniatures are agnostic space, so you can use anything you want to as well. So that part makes it really awesome. And if you're really trying to get into the hobby for the first time, this is a perfect product to do that with. And also, in my opinion, it's also a definite buy, especially if you're looking for a game that is very fun, fast-paced, skirmish-based game system with a dark fantasy lore behind it, with Earth's ancient history. It's a pretty cool setting, all things considered, so it makes it really, really awesome as well. So, once again, another great fact about this, in my conclusion, that it's an independent game company. They're called the Nth Level. They're from Cardiff, Wales. Help out and diversify the hobby. Any single time an independent game comes out to the market, it's always a good thing because it's always a benefit for miniatures wargamers like us. The more things that we can play, the more game systems we can learn, the more that we could use our miniatures collections in a variety of different games, we just went out overall. So I highly suggest you go check them out. Down in the description box below, I do have a hyperlink to their website, so if you want to check out exactly what this company is about and what kind of products they offer, you can check it out if you want to as well. And yes, I am planning on doing some battle reports with this system as well, so keep on the lookout for some Primordial Steel battle reports, so that way you can see how the game works in action as well, and determine if you want to get into this game or not. It's totally up to you guys. So that's going to do it for this video, guys. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is invaluable to us as always. Also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, as well as blogger.com for all the latest greatest hobby news related to this channel. I'm Commander Cheapskate. That's going to do it for this one, you guys. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out and stay classy.